Hey guys, welcome to Tuesday. This is our last video lecture over the civil rights movement. Today, make sure you guys are writing your discussion board response. This is your second discussion board response. Make sure that you post your response as a reply to mine, and then you do 2 to 3 sentences replying to someone else's discussion board. Okay. This will pretty much wrap up the civil rights for us after this video lecture. Tomorrow is a work day. You're also working on a primary source activity tomorrow over the Little Rock 9. And then Thursday we will have our writing assessment over the civil rights, and then we're going to get into the early 1960s. Okay? So what we have to finish up with today is 1, a Civil Rights Act that we're going to talk about, and 2, affirmative action. In a Supreme Court case, it goes along with affirmative action. So go ahead, get out your notes, and let's finish up these last 4 slides. So, desegregating and a ban on discrimination. So what ends up starts to happen within the United States is desegregation is going on, and they're starting to push banning discrimination throughout the United States. They shifted the focus from integration to economic equality during the civil rights movement. Integration's already happening, right? We're seeing integration within the schools and at restaurants and in cities. So we no longer have to focus on that. Now let's worry about socioeconomics. Let's worry about housing. Let's worry about jobs. Things that are actually going to be material to people throughout their life. Martin Luther King Jr. encouraged open housing throughout Chicago. And the Civil Rights Act of 1968 included fair housing components that banned discrimination in housing sales and in rentals. So this is getting rid of that restrictive covenant that we talked about before. And so it's making for equal opportunities and allowing African Americans to move out of the ghettos in these major cities, like we talked about in New York and Chicago and Detroit, into better housing opportunities, better economic opportunities, and is allowing them to advance. All right, and that's the biggest thing, is advancement in these areas. Districts start to use busing to integrate their schools. So maybe the school itself isn't integrated, so the school will have like a white school and a minority school within one building, but the busing's integrated. All right, and so that is one way that they can kind of get around the Brown versus Board of Education ruling. Well, we're integrating our busing. Well, the only problem is on those buses there was a lot of discrimination, there was a lot of racism. So a lot of times African Americans wouldn't ride the bus, or the bus stop was so far away from their house that it didn't actually give them the opportunity to ride the bus. So most of them walked to school or just went to minority schools as there were, because those are actually closer to their neighborhoods. The bus stop wasn't close enough for them to actually ride the bus. Once the busing becomes integrated, though, and African Americans and whites are riding the same bus and going to the same schools, that's slowly going to trickle into the school system itself and start that integration process. School authorities may not be required to employ bus transportation as one tool of school desegregation. So think about it. Some school districts may cut busing. You see that today. There's school districts in the state of Ohio that don't have busing. So like Upper Arlington School District is a smaller school district there in Columbus, and a lot of kids, there's no busing to the school. And so kids either have to get dropped off by parents, walk, or ride a bike to school. Well, if the school is 12, 15 miles away from where African Americans live and they're part of town, because there aren't schools like today where there's like schools every so many miles and so many districts and things like that, it's too far for them to actually go. So most of them just wouldn't go to school. So one way to prohibit integration or to stop African Americans from going to school with whites is just to get rid of your busing. And a lot of school districts did that throughout the South, because without busing, then there's no integration. Moving on. Fighting racism in the workplace through affirmative action. Affirmative action is a big thing. It's still something that's around today and still talked about today. Affirmative action is a policy called on employers to actively seek to increase the number of minorities in the workforce. This was first introduced by President John F. Kennedy. All right, and in theory, this is great. Okay, through affirmative action, we are trying to help African Americans, other minority groups, whether they're Hispanic, Asian, or whatever, get better jobs and make sure it's fair in these jobs. Later, affirmative action will go to genders, men and women. So if it's a male-dominated industry, making sure you hire women to go into those roles so it's equal. And that's the whole purpose, making sure it's equal and you're helping everyone out, okay? Great in theory, terrible when it gets put into practice, okay? And we're going to talk about that with the Supreme Court case. LBJ, which was Kennedy's vice president, who we're going to talk about in the 1960s, takes over after Kennedy's assassinated, expanded Kennedy's policy to include women in affirmative action, and Richard Nixon took affirmative action a giant step further and included goals and timetables. So what Richard Nixon said was, okay, so say we have teaching. Back in the 1960s, let's say all teachers were men. Well, by 1965, 5 years later, you need to have 5% of your workforce be females. And you need to have 7% of your workforce to be minorities. Now, of those minorities, women would fit into that. So if you hire 5% women, you would only have to hire 2% ethnic minorities, okay? So there's some ways that businesses got around affirmative action. And each year this would increase until it was trying to be 50-50 or as close to 50-50 as possible. So it was an equal opportunity employer for all, okay? And there was no discrimination based on race or sex, okay? So on the next slide, we have a graph, pie graph that we're going to look at. And it says college enrolled students. In 1976, white students made up 82.6% of college enrolled students. Minorities were 15.4%, other were 2%. By 2004, let's see how affirmative actions worked. You see that college students around 66.1% is white, minority is 30%, and other is 3.4%. So have we seen an increase because of affirmative action? Absolutely. All right. Now, some people may be sitting out there and saying, well, wait a second. This seems like it may not be good if I'm a white male. You're absolutely right, because you can get what's called reverse discrimination. Because you are in the majority, being a white male, you may not get the same opportunity because they may choose someone over top of you. And that's something we're going to get to when we get to the Supreme Court case, because that's going to become an argument for a lot of people. Remember, not everything's perfect. We're trying to create a situation to help people, not be the answer and to be what solves everything. All right? So, equalizing opportunities through preferential treatment. Practices used to carry out affirmative action have been controversial. So, preferential treatment is given to some groups. So you'll see some groups get jobs over others because of affirmative action. Preferential treatment means you're really focused on helping one particular group or one particular sex or ethnicity. It looks like unfair discrimination against white males, because since they are in the majority, their odds of getting that job decrease if they're going up against someone that is a minority or a female. Okay. Universities adopted affirmative action plans to attract more minority students, to create a diverse student body. Because on a lot of college campuses, it was either white males or white females. Now they're creating an integrated, mixed culture with different backgrounds, different beliefs, and it's helping change the educational system. You go to a lot of liberal arts universities, whether that's Ohio Wesleyan, Wittenberg, you're going to see a lot of diverse universities. Ohio State, any college campus you're going to step foot on is going to be extremely diverse, extremely integrated, and it's through affirmative action. All right. Now, the Regents of the University of California versus Bach. This is a Supreme Court case that goes along with Brown versus Board and Plessy versus Ferguson as one of our three major Supreme Court cases. All right, and it's going to be a Supreme Court case that's based on affirmative action. So, Bach was denied entrance 2 times in the med school at the University of California. The spot was filled by a minority student with a low GPA and bad test scores. So, you can see that Bach is probably what? A white male. So, he is seeing reverse discrimination based on affirmative action. Are his test scores better? Yes. All right? But he has a negative. He's a male and he's white, all right? Which means that someone who may have lesser test scores is going to score higher in 2 other areas that aren't specific to your actual job, which allows them to get into the school. All right. He thought that he was being reverse discrimination upon him, and so he sues the school. Court's ruling narrowly upheld affirmative action, declaring that race could be used as one of the criteria when it comes to selecting someone. But this is what it ultimately did. The court ordered the university to admit Bach into the medical program, so it appeased both sides, right? But think about this. How many of you have had to fill out an application for a job? Soon, probably college, right? Getting into next year and things like that. When you fill out these applications, what are the optional ones that you can choose? Gender, all right, and ethnicity. You don't have to specify. So who may not want to do that? Well, if you're a white male and you leave those blank, then no one can judge you. They have no idea what those are, all right, what those criteria are. All they can judge you on are your test scores and your other qualities. Now, if you are someone that is in the minority, whether that's ethnicity-wise or whether that's based on gender, that is a crucial area for you to fill out, because that may automatically move you over, and it doesn't even matter what your criteria is in the other side. And so that's why they make it optional. Now, if you don't fill it out, they don't just automatically assume, well, that's probably a white male that's doing that. But they're trying to make it fair, all right? They're trying to make it a blind test, because I don't know about you, but if I'm going to have like open heart surgery or something like that, do you care whether that person is a male or female, what their ethnicity is, or what's probably the most important thing, how well they did in school? If they're the best doctor, that's the person I want. You're not going to go through and fill out a criteria based on affirmative action. But for universities and for funding, they have to meet certain quotas and have so many people to get so much federal funding, all right? And so that's why on these forms, you have to fill that out. Now, today, you can choose not to fill any of that out. Now, how much do you think they actually look at it? I don't know, all right? With how big universities are today and things of that nature, and how well integrated we already are, I don't know how much of a role that actually plays, but I will tell you, for like jobs, you look at certain industries that are male-dominated, the next time they go to hire someone, they're probably going to hire a female, because they need to bring someone in that's different than what they have. Or if it's all white, they're probably going to hire a minority, because they need to help bring up a quota of how many people are in that certain area. So that's just something to think about when you think about affirmative action. All right? So make sure today, this wraps up our video lecture. Make sure you are doing your discussion board. You're continuing to work on your reading questions. Tomorrow is a work day for you guys on Wednesday. And then be ready for your writing assessment on Thursday. Keep sending me questions. I'll get your Q&A up on Wednesday night. And then I will have a Google conference, Canvas conference, I guess it's called, Canvas conference, on Thursday from 9 to 10. There's one today on Tuesday from 9 to 10. So make sure you join those, and I can answer any of your questions that you guys have for this unit. And then next time I see you guys on video lecture, it'll be Friday, and I will be bringing up the 1960s and the hippies and the counterculture. All right? Have a great day. Enjoy it, and let's get back to work, and hopefully you guys get the discussion board all right, and I'll talk to you guys later. Okay? See ya.